The Miami Dolphins are in the middle of a head coaching search. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the top candidates and who I think the Miami Dolphins should hire. Now, I'm going to start with the person I believe is the front runner to win this job, and that is Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers. Now, Hafley has an interesting background. A lot of times, first-time head coaches in the NFL are typically just rise up the coaching ranks in the NFL, become coordinator, and then become a head coaching job. Hafley was previously the head coach at Boston College, which brings a unique skill set in terms of the fact that he has managed an entire team before, so that's something that you like to see. And then obviously he's had, I believe, 2 years as the defensive coordinator for the Packers and has done a pretty solid job. It's very highly regarded around the league, whether it's obviously within the Green Bay Packers walls or people outside of the building. Think of him very highly. And obviously he's viewed very highly in this head coaching search, as I believe he's the finalist for at least 3 jobs and is considered kind of the pick of the litter for the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, with the GM we have now being from Green Bay, it makes sense for them to pursue Jeff Hafley, and as kind of reported by the likes of Adam Schefter, he is the front runner for this job. Now, it's not like what he's done as a coordinator has completely blown me out of the water. I do like the fact that he has head coaching experience at the college level, had Boston College playing better than essentially anyone else has had them playing of recent history. Bill O'Brien's currently the coach, and they're much worse since Hafley's left. So aside from that, I don't know too much about him, but he's viewed highly regarded. It's said that he's kind of blowing people away in these interviews, but obviously you don't coach in interviews. But nonetheless, I think he's a solid candidate, and I don't mind that he's being considered. I wouldn't say he's my pick of the litter based on specifically how his defense has performed, but it seems like he's the front runner nonetheless. Now I'm going to go over 3 more head coaching candidates. There's a much longer list that the Dolphins hired, including Kevin Stefanski, who was just hired by the Falcons. But the next guy on this list is the guy that I want the Miami Dolphins to hire, and that is defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, Chris Shula. And now, is a large reason purely the last name? The answer is yes. Yes, I hope that the last name somehow saves this franchise from the dead, as his grandfather, Don Shula, did, arguably the greatest coach in all of football. Obviously, won the 2 Super Bowls for the Miami, as well as the perfect season. So the fact that his grandpa has a history in Miami, he's a very good defensive coordinator. And the other thing that brings great appeal to me is that he is best friends with Sean McVay. And I don't mean that as like everyone who's friends with Sean McVay gets a job, but he sees firsthand what great offensive minds look like, what a great offensive scheme and system looks like, and how to think offense. So the biggest struggle a lot of defensive coordinators have is having the right people in place on the offensive side of the ball. And if they are good on that side of the ball, there's going to be extreme turnover, as offensive-minded coordinators are the kind of the first names to get poached for new head coaching positions. So the fact that he has that background and firsthand experience with Sean McVay for all of these years, I think bodes well for his ability to hire and have the offense stay consistent despite potential turnover at coordinator. So that is the main reason why I'm so appealed to Chris Shula. On top of the other things, obviously his defense is playing very good, although at the back end of this season has been struggling, but a very good defensive coordinator. I'm not going to lie, a big appeal for me is purely the Dolphins lineage and hoping that continues. We haven't had good luck hiring head coaches anyway, so why not take a stab at the last name? He's probably going to get a head coaching job, whether it's this year or next year. So, why not be the team that gives him a shot and see how it works out? I don't know too much about his leadership style, but the fact that he obviously has spent time with his grandpa, I'm sure he knows how to lead. He's been with McVay for all of these years, so he knows what a good football, what a good locker room, and good process looks like. So that is why Chris Shula is my person that I want to see the Miami Dolphins hire. Now, the next person on this list also has some ties to Miami, and that is former linebackers coach Anthony Campanelli. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Campanelli. Now, is it the way he talks and the fact that he's from North Jersey and I'm from Jersey? Partially, yes, but he's a guy that I think will breed a violent football team that's going to be tough and has his team playing extremely hard, knows how to lead men. His players hold him in such high regard, and it was his first year as a defensive coordinator, and his defense was balling. He obviously comes from a very good background of defensive coaches as well, first being in Miami under Brian Flores, and then under Vic Fangio. So those are 2 of the best minds that you can have learned under. And then obviously in his first year as a coordinator has done a great job. So between his leadership ability as well as his defensive prowess is what makes him so appealing to me. The concern, like I mentioned with Shula, where I think he might be able to circumvent some of those issues, is having stability at offensive coordinator is going to be extremely important. Who he decides to hire and like how good will he be at being able to bring those minds in. Obviously, he doesn't have an illustrious history of being surrounded with like offensive minds that he can pull on, like a Shula being with all of the McVay minds, and like Saleh, for example, for the Shanahan system. Like Campanelli was in Miami with Flores, where our offense was terrible, and then he had a year or two with McDaniel, so maybe he can pull on some of those candidates, and then 1 year in Jacksonville, which, once again, there might be some guys in the Jacksonville building that they all kind of, Cohen comes from the LA system, so like there could be some strings to pull there, but after, say, you hire a coordinator, they get a job, then you're kind of grasping at straws. So that would be my concern with Campanelli. It'd obviously be a first-time head coaching job as well, but his attitude, how he has his team playing, how his defense is, like, I am a big Anthony Campanelli fan, so that is why I would like to see the Miami Dolphins consider him for their head coaching job as well, and we obviously have interviewed him as well. So I would say he's probably number 2 on my list behind Shula. Now I lied. I actually have 2 more names I want to go under, because looking at my list of everyone we've interviewed, there's one name that has solid appeal, and it's Jesse Minter. Obviously, his bounce around between the hardballs, being at Michigan, then the Ravens, and then the Chargers. He's been everywhere related to the hardballs. He has the Chargers defense was one of the best in all football under him. He obviously has the connection to Mike McDonald as well, who arguably has the best team left in the playoffs. So he's a guy that I think is going to get a head coaching job. He's been around such good coaches between both hardballs, and just the defensive schemes that they run, which is like the mix of some kind of Fangio stuff with Wink, and there's a lot of different things that go into that. But he's a phenomenal defensive mind, knows winning football, and has learned under some of the best coaches in football. So that's why I'd also consider him for this list. Obviously, being a Michigan man probably bodes well for being hired by Stephen Ross. So I think Minter is a guy that will get a head coaching job. I'm just curious to see if it might be a little too early or if the Dolphins pulled the trigger on it. Now, the very last guy I have on this list, and I think will be the most controversial, is defensive coordinator for the 49ers, Robert Saleh. Now, obviously, former head coach of the New York Jets, and obviously was fired, and that was a very noisy team with all of the things going on between Aaron Rodgers, ownership. Nonetheless, Robert Saleh is a phenomenal defensive mind. Even when the Jets offense was horrendous, that defense was always like top 3 in all the important categories. He goes back to San Fran after being fired, has a team that has so much injuries, and they were still one of the best units in all football, playing so hard. It's without a doubt he is a great defensive mind. And the reason I would consider him is because, yes, what happened with the Jets was bad, but you can almost give him a rite of passage with how horrendous that ownership is. Woody Johnson is arguably the worst owner in all football, meddling in way too many football decisions. And that doesn't mean that Robert Saleh is without some blame. Like, I think the fact that he fired Mike LaFleur when he did, like, I think he should have probably kept him. And then a lot of things happen behind the scenes. They hire Nathaniel Hackett to kind of appeal to Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, a lot of things with ownership forcing moves upon his hand. Ownership fired him when they were a game out of first place for the division. Like, they weren't going to win the division, but it just goes to show how bad that ownership group is. They listened to their son about like Madden ratings to decide whether they should trade for Jerry Jeudy or not. Like, overall, like, it was such a mess that I think he can learn from some of the negatives that happened there, but also bringing his leadership, bringing his defensive prowess, bringing his connections to the Shanahan system and knowing what good offense looks like with better ownership and kind of structure in place. And like I said, he's obviously going to have learned from the things that were in his control that he didn't do as good. So that's why I'd consider Robert Saleh. I really do think his next stint as a head coach will probably go well because, once again, he's a phenomenal defensive mind. He has the connections on the offensive side of the ball to kind of have a pipeline of potential coordinators. And I think with a better structure in place and not a shit show, poorly run organization, he will have success. So I would say in terms of my rankings, number 1 would be Chris Shula. Number 2 would be Jeff Hafley because I do like his head coaching background. 3 would be Saleh. 4 would be Campanelli. And then 5 would be Jesse Minter. Comment down below who you want to see the Miami Dolphins hire. I appreciate you guys for watching. Like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And until next time, fins up.